Okay, greetings, friends. I guess I'd like to begin with a moment of silence uh, before I begin. So please join me. Good morning. So I'm here to tell you that today is, and this will be backwards, World Quaker Day. I have this great little poster that is from FWCC, which stands for Friends World Committee for Consultation. And I wanted to talk a little bit about FWCC. I've been involved with them as a representative from, I think, about 2015 when I was in Austin. And uh, so I always wondered what is a consultation? What is this? And it's a really fancy way of saying we have friends all over the world, and we get together sometimes and talk about being friends and talk about and share um, how we worship in the light. And they've broken down, there's a map in the meeting house about finding friends around the world, and they've broken them down into sections. So we're in the sections of the Americas, which includes all of North America, Central America, and South America. It's a very large land area. And there's about 140,000 friends in that area. And then there's Europe and the Middle East sections. There's an African section that has 181,000 friends. They are the largest and growing of the sections. Europe and Middle East has 32,000. And then there's Asia West Pacific section, which includes India and the western end of Asia, and Australia, New Zealand, that area, the Philippines. And there's about 24,000. So it's really interesting when I went to the PSAC meeting. I wanted to share a little bit about my experience. I'm just trying to see if there's any more to talk about. There's really they have a great website, which is fwcc .world. And you can go there and find meetings all over the world. If you're traveling, you can find a meeting. You can get resources. They have videos. They're really the promotional end of the Quaker organization. And their goal is to connect Quakers and to also let others know about Quakers in a very soft way. There are, of course, evangelical Quakers, and there are Quakers that proselytize, which I found interesting. And those groups are mostly in Africa. I want to say Kenya is one of the fastest growing regions of Quakers. And also our friends to the south in Bolivia and Mexico. And that's what I found so interesting going to meetings is when we have our worship, we combined all the all the different ways that we worship. And so there's singing, and there's a sermon, and there's Bible passages read, and there's a teeny little tiny part of silence, usually at the end, um, where it's maybe not so silent, but it's there. It's the way we worship, and that's what was so exciting for me to go to meetings. And the first meeting that I did go to was in Pisac, Peru, and that's near Cusco. And it was very interesting. It was very, very exciting in that when I walked in, everyone was getting a headset for interpretation, and it had a very world feel to it. Almost like, how I would imagine going into the UN is, or I had never been to a meeting with people from all over the world. So it was just exciting. What can I say? So that was about 4 days, I suppose. And there was worship sharing, just as there was it followed the same sort of bigger meeting where you would have the business, you would have people speaking, you'd have welcome, they had roll call, everyone got up to say where they were from. Um, and it was interesting in the worship share because there was the language barrier. There was also the differences in the way we worship. So that was a very amazing experience to be brought into. I later attended, I moved to California for about 4 years and was no longer in South Central. I was in South Yearly. However, I wasn't a representative to FWCC, but I did have the opportunity to travel to what is called every year, the sections break down and they have their own meetings. So there's this big international meeting. The next one's going to be in 2024. And then we have things that are called sections of the Americas. So that's where we go to be with our smaller group. And they've even started breaking those down into teeny tiny pieces, which there was one last month for the Midwest, which I believe we're part of. The Plains or the Midwest, I'm not sure. But I did not attend that. It was a 1 day, I think it was in Kansas or somewhere. But I was able to attend it was in Kansas in 2019, right before the pandemic hit. I was able to attend a section of the Americas where Shelley Tannenbaum was speaking, Sharice Bach and Adrian, can't think of his last name, but and they were all speaking on earth care. And it was from three perspectives. It was Adrian is the what do you call it? The chancellor of a university in the Midwest. And he is very Bible centric. And Sharice is sort of somewhere in between Bible centric. She teaches at theology in the West Coast at a university there. And then Shelley, who is an atheist. I mean, she'll tell you, well, she believes in God, but she's not an atheist. Oh, sorry, I didn't say that. She believes in she has a higher power. She believes in God, but she does not read the Bible. So you were getting these three perspectives. So I was able to attend a section of the Americas back in 2019. There wasn't a section of the Americas last year, and it was online. It was really wonderful. It was very short. I think it was just one Saturday. And then there's another sections of the Americas in 2023 in, I think it's North or South Carolina. So we come together and have that experience of sharing with each other's in the ways that we worship. So I'm always interested in finding out how people do that and meeting people. So it's been a great experience for me. I guess at this point, I'd like to open it up for any questions. Or not. I know Liz wanted to maybe make some comments I had some ideas about the ways that we can share about our own experience as Quakers later, but I think if Liz is there, I'd like to see if she has any comments, questions.
I think we're going, she's around, but not in the room. I think we're going to.
She's right here. She's on screen.
Oh, good.
She's in the
There
office.
she is. There she is.
I'm in the office, yeah, sorry. I'm busy doing something else, sorry. Did you have a question?
No, I know that you wanted to make some comments or speak to FWCC or World Quaker Day.
No, I actually, I'm embarrassed that I haven't been able to hear everything that you said, Andrea. So please, go ahead. I mean, there's not so much to say that you haven't covered, I'm sure. I think mostly, being aware of Quakers around the world is really important. And we may be different in different places, but I think it's a wonderful experience to go and be at a meeting with people who are worship in a different way, but hold many of the same values that we do. And so I encourage people to get involved in that way with worldwide Quakerism. Thank you.
Well, yeah, thank you, Liz. That helps. It reminds me of when we were at, I think it was just this past smaller meeting of the sections, and a Bolivian, and I don't know if it was because of the translation of the language, but a Bolivian friend said he was very sad because Jesus Christ wasn't my personal savior, and that he was praying for me. And it's interesting because I've had this experience with people who consider themselves Christians and hold the belief that we need to have Christ as our personal savior. And he didn't understand that I was that in some ways I might consider myself a Christian. I come from a Christian faith, a Christian background. I have the stories of my childhood Bible stories but I don't study the Bible currently. I find it difficult, and I've tried. I really have. So it was trying to help other people understand how worshiping in the way that many of us might worship, like myself, that we are all in spirit and holding the light in our own way. And it was difficult, and he was sad, and I tried to explain. So and this year the theme of World Quaker Day is becoming the Quakers the world needs. And I think in certain areas, the teaching of the Bible and the Christo, Jesus Christ centered, is important. And I think the proselytizing is important for certain areas. One huge program they've added and is their traveling ministry. And I do believe some people from an unprogrammed meeting in North Carolina had become traveling ministers and had traveled through this program to other meetings. But mostly it's being utilized by the Kenyan friends and the friends in South and Central America. And they are being able to travel and spread the word of the way that they worship. And so I think it's helped grow those areas. So maybe if we opened it up to the idea of becoming the Quakers the world needs as a worship share, or I also was thinking, if that doesn't land for you, maybe the idea of, you know, how you became to know Quakers. I mean, I always find that interesting, how many of us come from a lot of different backgrounds, and we find our way to a meeting somewhere at some point in our life. For me, somebody told me about it. She wasn't proselytizing, but she was just telling me like what she did. And so I want to open it up. I think, do we close at 9:45? Do we close like 15?
10:50, 10:50.
Oh, 10:50. I meant, okay. So we have maybe 20 minutes or so where I'd like to hear from the people online or at the meeting house. Becoming the Quakers the world needs, or your personal experience in coming to know the Quakers in your belief.
Terry's raising his hand. It's in the meeting room.
Can you see me in the meeting room?
Oh, you're standing
Yeah,
up.
there.
saying that.
I'm gonna encourage people when they speak, if they can, to come over and stand about here, because it sounds just right, and you're right on the camera, so people in Zoom land can see you. Anyway, I joined Friends in 1970, a little after 1970, and immediately got involved in a lot of national and international Quaker organizations. You know, these organizations are always looking for youth participation, and believe it or not, I was a youth. All right. And so I was involved in a national committee of Friends General Conference. I was involved in AFSC locally and kind of kept in touch nationally. I was a part of Young Friends of North America, which is no more, but it was what I call a pan-Quaker organization. That is, it had participation from pastoral friends as well as non-program friends. Gee, what else? Some other things, though. And it really made a big difference in my involvement in formation with Quakerism. And it among other things, you know, it led to my going to work for American Friends Service. Then later on, I worked for AFSC and was involved in other, went to Friends General Conference. Going to Friends General Conference, either virtually or physically, really is a big help. And going to yearly meeting really is a big help. The more you're exposed to Quakers around the world, many of whom have different practices, you begin to know a little better what both the historic practices of Quakerism are like and what it's like in other faith traditions in other countries. And it's just been fundamental to me. And I'm a little surprised when I look around our meeting these days. There are a few people who have that breadth of involvement, but not enough in my view. So I just wanted to encourage everybody, young folks, old folks, and just everybody to get to know these what I call pan-Quakerist organizations and get involved, and it'll really help you in your journey through Quakerism.
Well, as Andrea was kind of enumerating kind of large swaths of different forms of Quaker experience and worship and theology, I realized how varied it really is. And there are even other perspectives. For instance, rightly so, Andrea, I noticed when she would mention the evangelical or more proselytizing group, she would mention the Bible as a part of that, and some of the Bibles being associated with that more traditional Christian belief. But at least in my experience, I really like and study and read the Bible, but I have a theology that, depending on when you ask me, I might acknowledge some kind of a higher power, but usually not. I just like the Bible. And obviously I like it for different reasons, and I don't use it as an authority, but I think it's a very important piece of writing for us, just historically and for other reasons and culturally. There's all, I think there's all different kinds of experience that can fit under that Quaker tent, and I'm really glad. I'd like to ask Andrea and maybe others who've been more involved with the Pan-Quaker organizations, is there one thing that we can summarize that sort of, brings us all together and makes us still want to call all of our groups as fitting under one big tent or not? Is there something we can do, or is it more up in the air? Is it just a sense? So I'd be curious to hear what people have to say about that.
I could speak to that as I'm panning through this. I'm going to leave this at the meeting house. Tim G is now the general secretary, and let us remind ourselves every day that Christ's light is within every one of us and can guide us to make this world a better place. So I believe that that's what brings us together. Again, most of the general secretaries, that they'll quote the Bible. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Matthew 5:14. So all through this, and even the World Committee reflects. There's this language of light, illumination. So I do feel that use of that language, that early Quaker language of George Fox and those other early Quakers, sort of combined and with the thread of Bible verses that reinforce that, might be what we can come together on, and we can find a way. So that's my thought. I think Liz and
Did you mention the fact that people right now are all over the world, 1,000 of them, or maybe it's 5,000, are worshiping with the Ukraine, or with the friends in Moscow around Ukraine.
I didn't know
This
that.
morning was a chance to do that, and that's one of the things that FWCC has supported. I don't know whether you mentioned that yet. So, and I think it's been a wonderful thing, especially for the friends in Moscow. I know I have a friend in Moscow, and I've spoken with her, and she's been on some of the time. But it's also been a really wonderful thing for a friend of mine in New Jersey who gets on every day. They worship every day at 11. You can, and the link is on the SCYM website. We could put it on our website too. And you should have gotten an email with that link in it, just if you were on the yearly meeting list. Thanks, Andrea. Just remembered that.
Wonderful.
I've got another little one, if I can stick my nose in one more time. Okay. Well, I wanted to emphasize the importance of finding other friends who are different than you, and worshiping with them, working with them, being in workshops and worship sharing, but most importantly, worshiping. You know, when I've had those over time with those experiences, I've come to feel that we're all Quakers. You know, I look at these folks who come from past meetings or other countries and so on, and I think, are these guys Quakers? Their theological views are often very different from mine. Some of the cultural stuff is very different from me. Some of the ways that they worship, you know, sometimes when you look at it sort of rationally, it's hard to find the commonalities, but sitting there in the spirit, you just know that you're among friends. These folks are Quakers, 91 of them, and that's how you know. There's no other way.
I'll speak if you don't mind. I was born into this meeting and, oh, I'm Barbara. I was born into this meeting and mother went through the war without religion, and daddy grew up in the Baptist church, not his favorite thing, but there was a connection to it because of his family history. And they both married in a Quaker wedding in Germany after the war in 1950, and we were raised in the meeting. So I'm not a religious person. I look at the Bible as historical, and I don't even consider myself spiritual. I'm more realistic, maybe idealistic, and I've always been really proud to have been raised here. I'm clueless and naivete, probably my middle names, but I did what I could to raise us by crazy people. But when I look at the news, it gives me all kinds of emotions. But I think to myself, when I communicate with others or read stories or hear their situations, I think Quakers wouldn't treat you like that. So I'm not as present, but I think about it every day. If I were in that situation, how would I not embarrass the Quakers? How could I use what I've learned to address the situation in a meaningful way? And as Mother would say, if they don't have a smile, give them one of yours. So being super involved right now in politics, which I never thought I would be, but here I am. I get very upset, but make it better, make it better. So I don't go crazy off on people. I try to mediate. I try to calm down. I try to talk to people as though they're worth something. And I encourage them, if you don't fit in, you're welcome to the meeting because you'll feel better. So my thought process on Quakers is, how can I help my fellow man people presently to make their lives better? And it's not always that I'm here, but I'm doing it somehow, somewhere.
I wonder if we could hear the query again. I thought it came in later. Sure.
Sure. So there were two things I thought we could speak to, and one of them is the theme of this year's World Quaker Day, which is becoming the Quakers the world needs. And then the other query or thought that that always interests me is how did you come to find Quakers and Quakerism? What was your experience in that?
Well, I really like that title for this year's FWCC gathering. Because there's so, we're at just a critical point in our lives of how to meet the needs with the changing world that we're in, both politically, environmentally, both of those things happening. And putting bringing a spirituality to that and listening to that, where we're not putting opposition, not creating opposition, but creating unity and finding a place that we can agree on to survive on this planet. And it's all, the way that the world does it is not very helpful. It's painful to watch, and I really like that title. It's something for us to think about every day to begin our morning, about how to be the spirit that walks on this earth that the world needs. I like that. About 10 years ago, some friends of mine scattered across the states from California to New England, brought forth, we created a curriculum for first day schoolers. And we called it Sparkling Still. And we thought at the time that maybe our work was done. But in the 10 years since then, the Sparklers, this group of women who are passionate about religious education and particularly for young children, have done a number of things for the Quaker world, doing supporting the spiritual deepening program of Friends General Conference. We created a number of children's activities to tie in with reading newcomers. But our latest effort started actually in the middle of the pandemic in 2020, where our friend Beth Kalia, who's in New England, said, you guys are good at picking out good picture books for children to learn peaceful ways of living. And since then, 2.5 years later, we have worked with electronic books, both from African Storybook and from Storyweaver in India, to bring books to children that are underserved and emphasizing the peaceful ways of living, conflict resolution, and learning through these books, not only learning to live a peaceful life, but also learning English as a second language for many of them to be able to reach out to the broader world than just their local native area. And we are working with folks in Indonesia, the Philippines, Nepal, Rwanda, Guatemala, El Salvador. So we meet on a regular basis with folks from all those places to advance this project, and it's been very fulfilling.
I'd like to share just a little experience about becoming the Quaker the world needs. And for me, it's been a path of authenticity and becoming more of who I am. You know, it was probably almost 30 years ago that I went to my first Quaker meeting in St. Petersburg. And I remember it wasn't what was being said or not being said, but it was the feeling that I had. And many people will say, oh, I went to my first Quaker meeting and it just felt like the right place. And so, you know, for me as I'm an intuitive person, you know, I picked up on that and just that feeling. And so much of my life has been spent just looking for that creative spirit and that feeling of authenticity, of being who I am supposed to be. And that allows me to, it informs what I do and how I do it. And it embodies that idea of the light and being not only a human in this physical world, but being able to embody the spirit of the divine and the choices that I can make. So it's, for me, it's very esoteric in a personal way. And I just have continued to develop and allow how it unrolls for me. How does it unfold? What is the next right step to take? What is calling me? What is leading me? And how does that unfold? So for me, becoming the Quaker that the world needs is to embrace that authentic being and open myself up to the light and know that it's in me. It's, that it's almost that non-dual. I am it. I'm embracing it, and I am it. Um,
I gotta go to day school and get ready. And I've only been coming here for a short time. And partly, I guess I started coming here partly because I knew Delia, and partly because I've studied religion and spirituality a lot over the years and knew a little bit about Quakerism. But personally, I had some mental health issues that were really, causing me some trouble in my life. And I needed this kind of quietude. I think somebody mentioned at the wedding, the marriage ceremony the other day, about how there was less pageantry involved. And I've been in so many churches over the years where so much emphasis is there. I don't know, some of it's power structure with the minister having sometimes a lot of power because they're a central figure in how a church or a place of worship is run. And then I saw so many times where parishioners either worship the ground that person walks on and whatever they say is, like scripture, or they hated that person's guts and tried to get rid of them in any way that they could, or that minister misused their power in some way within the church. So this whole egalitarian democratic way of worship appeals to me. I sat for a short while at the Austin Zen Center, and I really enjoyed that, at that time, but I can't do that now. It's not feasibly possible for me to get there early in the morning and then get to work and whatnot. So this way of being, and there's the whole idea of, they say when you're on an airplane and there's an emergency, the thing drops down, you're supposed to put the mask on yourself before you help, the person next to you, or the child that you have with you. And with me, I have to have, I think with all of us, we have to find that peace within ourselves before we can branch out and start, working on our greater community. And so I'm just kind of coming out of this time where it's all about me and my mental health and my, where I'm at, and being able to do some things again, in the greater community. I'm glad for that, but yeah, that's where I'm at.
some of the comments brought to mind my own experience first coming to Quaker meeting, and it came to me in a kind of a haiku form one time after being here for a while, and it was this way. First day morning, friends settling in. Suddenly I hear the silence. Because in my mind, I recall sitting in the gathered worship service, and the depth of that silence was really amazing. I had been studying Eastern traditions for some time and meditating and practicing yoga and so forth. When I came back to Austin, that kind of fell aside. And when I came to the Quaker meeting, I found that would be a good middle way between my sort of Episcopalian upbringing with all of the ritual and all of the other elements to it, and the sort of Eastern tradition, which was generally more meditative and inward focused. So for me, a Quaker meeting, and especially with the community of people in this meeting, gave me a place where I could come without having to adopt things that didn't feel right and the connection to, I didn't feel a connection to, but gave me the space and the support to just continue settling in. And that's been the case since then. And the people who are here have helped that to happen as well.
I think we're just about at time to close this session. And I want to thank everyone. And I guess we can just close it out with another minute or so of silence. Thank you.